it's incredible to think about it. I tell this story a lot because one of the most common questions I get when I'm on podcasts is people ask how you got started. And then, it always leads to how did you get started in multifamily? And, I always tell the story about how, I was flipping single family homes, and I had a real estate agent that was selling the homes for me when we renovated them. And he was a CCIM. And I remember going into his office one day, and I wanted to do a 1031 exchange. I had 2 rental houses I wanted to sell, and I wanted to buy an income property. But I said, Al, I have no idea what to look for on an income property. I don't know what I'm doing. I don't understand the income statement. And, you're a CCIM. What do you have to say? And he sat me down in his office and ran me through the whole thing about how to read an income statement on multifamily property. And, several months later, ultimately, he ended up selling me my first multifamily property in that 1031 exchange. And it all started from there.
Dude, that is so crazy. So I was a protege of Al and Pat, and to this day, I still brag about how brilliant he is. And really, it's Pat. Sorry, Al, but it's Pat. But really, he is a brilliant, brilliant mind when it comes to real estate investing and the strategies of the CCIM. And he taught me APODs. And all of a sudden, when I started using the word APOD to other agents that didn't know what it was, it gave me like a feeling of superiority. But it was Al that did that for me too. So I'm really kind of taken that was your journey, and that I was in a small part of that during that time period. And I've been a big fan of yours. Make no mistake. I'm a big fan of Tanya's up in Reading. She is an absolute class act. And, I didn't even put it together that you and I knew each other in that capacity until later. I was talking to Tanya, and then she goes, well, Brian's from Santa Rosa. I'm like, wait, I'm from Santa Rosa. I kind of know a lot of people. And lo and behold, we ended up, our circles were a lot closer than we thought. And, we went to lunch, it was a couple of years ago now.
Yeah.
But, I just admired your path, and I've bought houses from you without even knowing it was you.
Oh my gosh. I didn't even know I sold them to you.
I know. I've tracked in different flipping things before I knew that they were in your circle,
Interesting.
And I remember talking to Tanya about staging. And so what happens when I talk to her about staging, then I go, well, shit, I know Brian. And then that was him. And then that was her. And so this whole circle kind of came back full circle. So it's really kind of an emotional appreciation for me that I get to have you on the show. And, you have an absolute amount of knowledge to share with people. And I don't even know how to structure that into a valuable content that they could take away from this, but you have quickly become somebody that I look up to in that particular space and category. Is, wow, you're doing some amazing stuff. Tell us about some of the current projects. I know you just closed on one, if I'm not mistaken, and talk us through the ones that you can talk about right now.
Yeah, we did actually. We're still doing a little bit of house flipping. In fact, we're still doing some house flipping back up in Reading, where we kind of built this business to begin with way back in the day. And
right.
Tanya's still my agent up there selling properties for us and doing a fantastic job. And, so we still have that element of our business. And, we even do flipping in Sacramento and in Solano County and in a few other areas. So, we've kind of got that arm of the business going at the same time as our multifamily operation. It's really the multifamily operation is kind of on a dollar volume basis where all of our activity is, even though the flipping on a transaction basis outnumbers it, because it's easy to do a lot of transaction volume on small dollar houses. But when you're doing multifamily, our most recent closings here, they were about $40 million between the two of them. We just closed on around 421, I think it's 421 units or somewhere around that, somewhere around that range, on 2 properties in the Atlanta, Georgia market. So really what we're doing now is we're buying value add Class B and C multifamily properties, generally 100 units and up, usually kind of between 10 and $30 million per property, all across the US.
Wow. You're using big words already, Brian. And the thing is like, I remember back, we talked about that time frame of when you started buying multifamily. So tell me, what was your first set of multifamily? Like, what did that look like?
My first multifamily was a 16-unit apartment building in Redding, California, and it was built in the 1960s. It was an individual guy that owned it, and I bought it in that 1031 exchange. I sold 2 rental homes. use the proceeds from the 2 rental homes to buy the apartment complex, but I didn't have enough for the whole down payment. So, Al connected me with a lender up there that did the loan, and then he somehow convinced the seller to carry back a 10% second note so that I had the balance of the down payment. So then about a couple years later, I had renovated some of the apartment units and done some work to the outside to improve the curb appeal, brought the rents up, streamlined the income some, and Al connected me with another lender that did a refinance, and I was able to put a permanent loan on that property that took the seller's carry back out, and I was all on my own from that point forward. That was my very first one. And funny story, I literally just sold that property 2 years ago. So I think I owned it for like 16 or 17 years.
What street was it on?
It was on West Street, right behind, kind of like over by the river.
I could freak you out, and I think I can almost name the address because I have a freakish thing about remembering addresses of properties we had listed back then. But I know that property very well. I remember which one you're talking about. So, what did that look like back in 2002, 2003 when you buy your first 16 unit? What kind of nightmares, what kind of headaches, what kind of joyous things? Walk me through what that looks like, and the listeners, so they can understand, what that piece looks like. And I want to talk about financing because that was a pretty big statement you made there.
Yeah. So, the biggest challenges really all revolved around property management. And it was really challenging. At first I had a property management company that was overseeing it, and it was actually the seller's property management company. I just kept it with the same management company.
Right.
And that
I'm not going to name names.
No, not naming names. So that relationship was a little challenging. It was kind of difficult for me to navigate. This was my first kind of bigger property, and
right.
Things weren't going exactly the way I felt they needed to go. And when it's a 16 unit and that's the biggest thing you've ever invested in, you really pay a lot of attention to it.
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, right. So I was paying a ton of attention to it, and it just wasn't quite going the way I wanted. So I decided that it would be better if I took the property over myself and hired an on-site manager to manage it. I basically give them a free apartment and let them manage the property. And man, that was probably, in retrospect, the worst decision I ever made. But from a personal development standpoint, probably the best decision I ever made. And,
interesting.
And the reason that it has kind of that, that complete binary opposing thing is it was the worst decision because you really got to have professional management. And this was the stake, this is the blind leading the blind. This is my first multifamily property, right. And I'm hiring someone in there that's, managed some other buildings before for other owners.
Maybe a good maintenance guy.
Yeah, exactly. And that's about it. Right. And at the same time, it was the best decision because it really taught me, how to navigate a lot of challenges. And, there's no better way to learn how to swim than to be thrown into a tank of sharks.
Absolutely. But you do get your butt bit sometimes.
Yeah, I did, and it was really difficult. I mean, it was surprising to me how challenging it was to hire for that position and bring someone in. It was really, really difficult to find the right person. And it took us about 3 different people before we found the right person. And then ultimately, even at that, I finally realized that I couldn't provide the required level of individual oversight, right, to make sure that person did things exactly the way they needed to be. And I ultimately ended up bringing a professional management company back in to manage it again. So,
gotcha.
I learned full circle. It was a really good lesson.
So if we were having drinks and I was buying a 16 unit, what would the 2 or 3 takeaways be from your experience on that? Because I know I have a lot of people that are going to watch the show. Maybe our whole tens of fans will watch this, but kidding. We've had some really good traction. But the thing is, we're going to have a lot of agents, a lot of entrepreneurs, a lot of wantrepreneurs, people that want to get in that space. So what's 2 or 3 takeaways you would tell me as a brother to look out for, take advantage of, whatever in that experience?
I'd say, first of all, the best decision you can make is to scale. And, if you can get, it's like Monopoly, right? You get the 4 houses and you trade in for the hotel,
Yeah.
This is the same thing. It really does make sense to scale. And if you can grow to larger properties. And the sooner you can grow to larger properties, the more you can scale your investment portfolio and your skill set as a real estate investor. So that's kind of step one.
Okay.
Step two is, as soon as you do scale up to something like that, get out of those smaller buildings as fast as you can to go even bigger, because there's nothing that's more difficult to manage than that, call it like 10 unit to
in between
75 units. That 10 to 75 is really, really challenging because, you know, under 10, it's like single family, you know, there's a lot of really good managers that can deal with that. You get over 10, you can't quite, there's not enough revenue to quite afford like the top tier management teams that really have it together. And, you know, there are some good ones out there, but man, they're hard to find. When you get up over, you know, kind of that 75 to 100 units, and when you get into 200 units, you really start being able to have enough revenue to be able to compensate top tier teams. So grow as fast as you can and grow as big as you can.